Us is former UK mayoral candidate Nims Obunge. Good to have you join us from London. This has sparked a lot of reactions. I'm wondering what your reaction is, first to this violence, and secondly to how it has been handled.
Well, thanks for having me on your news today. But I think, first of all, without a doubt, my heart goes to the families of the 3 young girls who were killed, 9-year-old Alice, 6-year-old baby, and 7-year-old Elsie, who just were at the Taylor Swift holiday camp with their friends and other young girls, and to be stabbed in this way and killed by Axel Ruda Kubana, that's just really, really sad. So my heart really goes to them. And also to the 8 children who are on recovery and the 2 other adults on recovery. So it is right, I think, that his name was put in the public domain, albeit he's under 18. But I suppose looking at what's happening or what's happened across the country, not that that was able to quell the riots, but it's just really unfortunate that these young girls had to be targets, and we wait for the court to follow its due process. But that said, the riots remind me of what happened not too far from my office here in 2011 when we had the Tottenham riots, and then it spread across from city to city. And it might be one issue that triggers so many other things that have been simmering in the heartbeats of others. And we know that this is driven by the far right, the notion of an anti-Islamic or anti-immigration rhetoric that exists in our nation. And I think that what we've got to understand here is the way disinformation and misinformation spreads on social media and what that has done.
And then, Mr. Obunge, all right, we'll get to talk about, how the issue of misinformation and disinformation could actually be tackled, because, it's a global challenge and it's something that really needs to be dealt with. But let's talk about the response, the emergency response meeting of, that's the Cobra Meeting now. Many have said that this meeting should have held before now. As a matter of fact, the Shadow Home Secretary, Nims cleverly says it should have been convened much earlier. Do you share the same sentiment?
Well, let me say that whilst I agree that the Cobra meeting should have held earlier, but I do know that there was a meeting the Prime Minister had, and because I'm non-partisan, I know he had a meeting last week with chiefs, police chiefs, but it wasn't a Cobra meeting. And that meeting again was to respond to this sense of senseless violence. Without trying to take a political position on it, I think it was very clear, and the Prime Minister did come out quite strongly last week, and talking about the thuggery. Immediately after this happened, he'd been to Southport twice to visit where these girls were killed. I think that there is a message. The backdrop to this was a week before this. Let's also remember that Tommy Robinson had a big event at Trafalgar Square, and the far right were gathered there, and the message was very strong about, give us back our land and send the boats back, the notion of immigrants coming by boat. And I know that we're going to talk about the social media misinformation, disinformation, but it's so important that we understand what acted as a catalyst. And it's all these things that act as when you have this negative response to the issues of immigration and Islamophobia that's going on in our country.
All right. And the Prime Minister, just as you have mentioned, has called the situation far-right thuggery, and he's warned that those involved would regret taking part. How seriously should that warning be taken?
Well, let's a backdrop on the Prime Minister. At the time, I used to be the chair of the London Criminal Justice Board Advisory Group. I was overseeing criminal justice for London. Around that time, he was the chief Crown Prosecution Officer. So he has a history of being involved in criminal justice, and so he knows what he's talking about. And I think he That's not just rhetoric. I think that's reality. I think it's important that we have the courts working through, sometimes maybe through the night if need be, in order to bring these people to justice. Because let's be clear, there have been about 400 arrests, over 50 police officers injured, a lot of damage to public property. Innocent citizens have had their businesses burned, cars have been burned. There's a lot of fear that exists now in different communities. That is unacceptable. And so I believe that the Prime Minister needs to be very firm and say that this cannot continue. And those who perpetrate such wickedness and violence in our streets need to be told it's unacceptable. You can't continue to terrorize individuals. We totally agree that what happened in South never happened.
All right, I hear you, Mr. Obunge. Now, this final question is two in one. You know, the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, has said that police have government backing to take the strongest action. I'm wondering what extent you think we're looking at here. Does it involve the army coming in? That is one. And secondly, will be that issue of misinformation and disinformation and how you think this can actually be handled.
So I don't believe that we need the army at this point. I think the British police are strong enough to respond robustly to this, and I welcome the Prime Minister's idea of getting specialist army of police officers to deal with this. There's a play on words here, but I think that we've got to also acknowledge the role social media plays and the importance of police and social media. Now we know that the more the clicks you get on social media, it boosts advertising. It's a multi-billion industry, and what those who own social media platforms might find themselves more comfortable doing is accepting some of this, albeit it does impact on our wider society. So I know in Germany right now there's a framework where if you've been given notice within a 24-hour window, you need to pull down misinformation and disinformation, something to that effect. And if you don't, you can get fined up to 50 million euros. So you've got to hit where it hurts on such social media platforms. People need to be very clear that this kind of thing destroys lives, destroys communities, destroys all the cohesion that many of us have been working to build. I chair the Race Equality Commission for the UK, and there's a lot of work we've been doing to build race relations. We can't destroy that just with a click of a button.
All right, then. Former UK mayoral candidate Nims Obunge, thank you so much.